Mr. Agnew.
Well, I'm going to defend you, madam. As a British person, and as you know, the British pour money into the EU and don't get very much out of it, I do want to know where our taxpayer subsidies are going. And I think what you said, what? Why? Because they pay the money, that's why. And I think that was most interesting. You've lifted the lid on something and we want to keep that lid open. And I know these MEPs from France will want to back the people in their own countries who are getting the subsidies. But what's actually happening here? Handing money to people to go and desecrate the oceans. What is the point in that? And the specific question I want to ask you is, have you worked, what you've said is presumably in the public domain, the amount of subsidy, the amount of profit if it's a public company. Have you done the calculation of how much subsidy per individual employed in there? Because it might be better just to give them the money and have done with it and burn the ship. The other question I want to ask is from another presenter. They showed a distorted map of the world with the countries which have a big fishing industry and highlighted. Is that per individual in the country, per member of population, or is that actually the gross size of the industry? Looking at the USA, it would appear to have a non-existent fishing industry, yet I'm sure they eat a lot of fish. I wonder if that could just be clarified. Thank you.
Now, amount of subsidies per individual, but
easy to do.
But it's an easy thing to do, as Dennis says. The map, the distorted map, you were asking about the distortion on the map. That's based on deep sea landings, and deep sea landings only, so deep sea species, and that's why some countries completely shrink.
Señora Nouvian,
Right.
Sorry, Mrs. Nouvian. Can you be as to the point as possible, because we really are well behind.
Estoy contestando.
I'm just replying to the question. No, I realise that. What I'm trying to say, if you could be brief, you can be concise or lengthy, you can point the finger or not point the finger, you can think aloud more or less, so could you just be more to the point if at all possible?
Continúe, por favor.
Pero solamente tengo como que hacer eso, public debate, obviously it's a good thing. So anyway, I think just to wrap up, I think you always cut me just before I actually finish. I just, as a wrap up, I would say that I think we have this problem of not just unprofitability, but a problem of unviability. And obviously, I think this data, and I hope it will shed a new light, very concrete, robust data that anyone can check by looking on the internet. You can all access the accounts, and you can come up with your own conclusions. But the figures are there, and so I'm happy that maybe this is thrown in this arena, and you can debate this. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Seguramente.
Thank you. Well, no doubt I cut you before the end, but that was because you hadn't reached the end. Mr. Cadec.
I'm actually gonna dash through this. Why did we develop an expertise on economics of these French deep-sea fisheries? We were part of a multi-stakeholder consultation, which was supposed to look at deep-sea fisheries and whether they were sustainable ecologically and economically. And basically, the process didn't go very well. We had a lot of issues with what happened within the process. So the report, as it stands today, was very embarrassing for the government because there were no references, and NGOs resigned from the process, and the peer reviewing that was done of the report was not integrated. So as a result, this file does not have any legal standing. But what it did do is that, and this is the critique that we've made of the process, it's available in English on our website should you want to investigate this further. But the process did hint us on the fact that all the socioeconomic parameters had been avoided and not addressed, and we thought that it was really worth trying to build some understanding and to gather data, so that's what we've been doing. I want to make it very clear that I've got this one slide about job estimations, and that's the weak point, and it's very difficult to estimate jobs if you don't have access to the real data. So I don't want to say something funny because the rest of our data is extremely robust. I just want to say that during this mission, this stakeholder mission that we had on deep sea fisheries, we talked about 100 to 200 jobs, and then when the Commission came out with its proposal to phase out deep sea bottom trawling and to review the current deep sea fisheries management regulation, this 600 jobs figure from the French side was circulated, and so we were really wondering what's the calculation basis for this, and we want to understand, how it came up. And we've asked, and so far we haven't got a response, so I can't basically comment on that. Scapèche's total employees as they appear in the published accounts, and the accounts actually only talk about 9 boats, but part of those 9 boats are the 6 deep-sea boats. So the total employees of Scapèche are about 103 in 2011. So the other things that we did is that we based our analysis on account analysis, because that's at least something where you can't make up figures, estimations. There's no estimations. Just look at the figures and you can comment the figures. So we published an analysis in 2011 that ran all the way until 2008, and we wanted to update the key findings, which were that the 3 main fleets that were targeting deep-sea species in France were chronically loss-making, despite having and receiving very large subsidies. And so we wanted to update this, but then we realized that Scapèche had stopped publishing its accounts since 2009, so we engaged legal recovery proceedings for translators, that's assignation en référé, and the fact that we initiated this encouraged them to publish their accounts in mid-January 2013. So we've just produced an analysis of Intermarché's fishing fleet's accounts, and therefore we're able to produce this global analysis of these 3, what used to be the 3 main deep-sea fishing fleets in France. And first we can look at the subsidies that they received over time. So Euronord, from 2006 and 2011, received 4.9 million euros public subsidies made up of EU and national money, French money. Scapèche, from 2002 to 2011, that's based on what accounts are available. 2002 to 2011 received 9.34 million euros. And Delem, you can't see it because this little thing has popped, but Delem received 1.05 million euro subsidies. This is a new subsidy mechanism that came up. I wish I could comment on it, and I'm happy to talk out to you afterwards, but I'm late, so. Now we can look at the economic performance of the French deep-sea fleets and to look at their financial results. So Euronord, for the same time span, has accumulated 8.1 million euros of net losses after tax, despite receiving 4.9 million euro subsidies. They actually basically went bankrupt, and so were bought by UK Fisheries in 2010. And we've seen, since they were bought by UK Fisheries and since they actually disengaged from deep-sea fishing somewhat, quite importantly, we've seen a slight improvement of their situation that I'm going to show in the next slide. Scapèche has done 0.1 million euro net losses on the same time span, but that's after tax, and that's despite 9.3 million euro subsidies and 16.9 million euros of debt write-offs from Intermarché. So in other words, that's cash injection from the group inside the fishing fleet. So the actual net losses, if you didn't have that, would be, of course, a lot more important. Delem has a 3.6 million euro net loss after tax, despite 1 million euro subsidy, and 7 million euro financial result and 9 million euro exceptional profit. So basically, their shifts, the way they've been shifting. Okay, I've got to hurry up. So anyway, they've been doing quite smart financial movements to improve their situation. The performance indicator is really the operating. I'm going to comment this one last slide. The real performance indicator for a fishing company is to look at the operating result, because that's turnover minus operating costs. And that's a really faithful picture of the fishing activity. And for Euronord, you can see that if you exclude the subsidies received, Euronord has improved and it's now doing a profit. So its actual fishing activity is now profitable. It's very small. It's not a huge profit, 2%, but at least it's not in deficit. Scapèche, its operating result without subsidies is 8%. If you look at Delem, the operating result, is 25%. So basically, that's a percentage of the turnover. So when you say that a fishing company is losing 25% of its as an operating result, it's 25% of its turnover. So that means that the fishing activity is seriously not not just unprofitable, which is, I think, is very clear. It's not even viable. So I would bet that Dolem is going to go bankrupt, or if it's not already bankrupt, it's going to be for sale or something very soon.
Señora Nouvian, tiene que terminar porque llevamos...
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to finish up.
Market response in France, but basically to show that some supermarkets have already shifted away from deep sea fish, selling deep sea fish, but that's basically the core of the presentation.
Thank you very much. I'm terribly sorry to have to cut you short, but our time today is short.